It's absolutely insane. I used to buy like the cheap boxes from Menards of framing screws, and they were, you know, 25-pound box. They were like $50. I was like, yeah, this is
Feels
perfect.
good when you write the check, but not when you're putting them in.
But your tool even works harder.
Right.
You ever done that? You ever use like an old crappy framing screw and then you use a GRK and it's quieter, it goes in smoother? We haven't bought anything since. I mean, it just doesn't even make sense. They're so good. Structural screws, have you used many of these, Paul?
I do, actually, yeah.
Yeah.
I have a whole box of...
Hey, Greg, do you remember the time we got a monster box of these?
Oh my gosh,
We had an engineer, a truss came out and it didn't have a plate. One plate was missing, okay? And they sent out 2 more trusses, full trusses that had to get married together.
Wow.
And how many screws? Hundreds of screws.
Hundreds.
Yes, they were 4-inch, had to go through, and they had to come from both sides. Luckily, they were these screws, so they drove pretty easily.
These are cabinet screws.
Back in the day when I used to do more residential, I would, once again, just go get cheap cabinet screws, and you'd have to drill the hole. You'd have to like put some bar soap or just kind of spit on the screw to get it to drive without breaking.
Right.
You'd even actually have to, we just did a rustic hickory, which is a hard wood, and I put some of these screws in to do face frames, screw them together. No pre-drill. You could never do that with like a cheaper, lesser inferior screw. ITW having all these high-end brands, like when you think of screws, GRK, when you think of concrete fasteners, Tapcons, do you use many Tapcons?
Yeah.
I mean, we go through boxes of those all the time, and nailers, the Paslode nailers, they're all, none of them are down here, they're all up here in kind of the eyes of most contractors. I don't know, it's just something about the technology and the screws and the way they drive that is just way more enjoyable to use.
And these bits. These
Paul,
are the
you
best.
love those bits, man.
These are the best bits. I mean, these green bits are just amazing. They last forever.
In a while because we've not had to get new bits in a while.
They just
forget
keep
how
going.
green they are.
Yeah. So yeah,
we're just gonna put some of these in our pocket.
They become silver after a while, but you can still see a little bit of green. And then you got the good one.
Yeah.
It's not gonna break.
You got your greens, then you got your reds for your trim screws. You got your yellows for your trim screws.
Gold,
purple. So those bits just go forever. Until you lose them, you usually don't have to replace them.
I like that you're putting a 2-inch full-size bit here because the 1-inch inserts, if you're on an impact driver or anything with a lot of torque, those 1-inch inserts, you're just wallering out your holder. I've had instances where we're putting in cabinets and the builder will bring SPACs, screws in for installation, and they have a certain bit, it's a proprietary bit, and it looks a lot like Torx. So, all the guys are like, hey, it's a Torx, it's a 20, maybe a 15. And they get their driver and it just doesn't work right with the screws, and they're wondering why they're stripping out and they're wobbly and they just can't drive them. And then you bring the GRKs out and everybody's happy because they work and they're stronger.
Everything should be standardized, I think. And everything should be, I think, internally driven. Any sort of external drive on a finished screw or something, it just doesn't look as good, doesn't perform as well, and nobody should be using Phillips anymore.
What's that?
Yeah, you still see them. I still got, contractors will show up and they'll use like a Phillips drywall screw on something. You're like, what are you doing, man? Until they find my box of GRKs that I left out because I'm still working there, and then you start finding GRKs in places because they've been using them.